sisters, let us turn to Corinthians. We are...
What if paradise on Earth turned out to be a place that sailors had called Devil's Island for centuries and avoided? History knows many examples when disaster was the beginning of something great, but this case is unique even for the era of the great geographical discoveries. At the beginning of the 17th century, the English colony in Virginia was hanging by a thread, and a grand squadron was sent to its aid. The flagship Sea Venture carried not only supplies and the governor, but also the fate of the entire future British Empire in North America. None of the expedition members could have imagined that instead of the shores of America, they would encounter a legendary hurricane in uncharted reefs. This is the story of how hundreds of people found themselves locked in a golden cage in the middle of the Atlantic, torn between duty and the temptation to stay in paradise. Their experiences of survival, political intrigue, and engineering feats formed the basis of one of Shakespeare's most famous plays. Watch the video to the end to find out how a handful of survivors, building ships from wreckage and cedar, saved Jamestown from complete destruction and changed the map of the world.
The harbour here offers the best defense. Indeed. We shall place the main battery here to protect the settlement.
Guess how long it took to turn a proud flagship into a helpless splinter? When the 3rd Supply Squadron left England, the Sea Venture was a marvel of naval engineering of the time, a symbol of hope and power. 7 ships sailed in close formation, carrying hundreds of settlers to reinforce the outpost at Jamestown. But the Atlantic dictates its own rules, and at the end of July, the sky turned black, foreshadowing disaster on an unprecedented scale. The hurricane struck suddenly, scattering the ships of the squadron like dry leaves across the vast expanse of water. The wind was so strong that, according to eyewitnesses, it drowned out even thoughts, let alone the orders of the officers. Captain Christopher Newport, an experienced sailor who had weathered many storms, encountered such fury of the elements for the first time. The waves rose higher than the masts, crashing onto the deck with tons of water and washing away everything that was not nailed down. The ship creaked and groaned, each wave threatening to be the last for the wooden hull. The hold began to leak, and the water came in faster than it could be pumped out. The passengers, among whom were gentlemen who had never known physical labor, stood shoulder to shoulder with the sailors. The fear of death erased all social differences, leaving only one common goal: to keep the ship afloat. At one point, the water level in the hold reached a critical point, and it seemed that there was no hope of rescue. Admiral George Somers, despite his age and fatigue, did not leave the captain's bridge, trying to keep the ship against the waves. He peered into the impenetrable fog, hoping to see at least some landmark or a break in the clouds. People were on the verge of physical and mental exhaustion, many simply falling where they stood and falling asleep to the roar of the storm. The sails had long since been taken down or torn by the wind, and the ship drifted, completely at the mercy of the ocean. No one knew where they were or how far they had been carried off course from Virginia. Hope faded with each passing hour, giving way to cold despair and resignation to the inevitable. It seemed that nature itself had decided to test these people's endurance by unleashing all its power upon them. The holds were waist-deep in water, and the men worked in complete darkness, guided only by touch and the cries of their comrades. Buckets were passed along the chain, but it was like trying to scoop out the sea with a spoon. Every creak of the hull was perceived as the death rattle of a ship about to fall apart. However, even in this hell, discipline was maintained, and panic, which could have destroyed everyone, was avoided. This was a testament to the incredible strength of spirit and leadership qualities of the expedition's command. On the 4th morning, when their strength was running out and the water in the hold had reached a critical level, Admiral Somers spotted land on the horizon. It seemed like a mirage, a cruel joke played by his weary mind. But the outline of the shore became clearer and clearer, and soon it was clear that they were facing land. This discovery brought not only joy, but also new fear. for the coast was unfamiliar. The maps of the time were inaccurate, and no one could say with certainty what this place was. Nevertheless, there was little choice. Either try to land or sink. The admiral made the risky but only possible decision to steer the sinking ship straight onto the reefs. It was an act of desperation, calculated on the hope that the ship would get stuck between the rocks and not sink completely. The maneuver required precision and incredible skill from the helmsman in stormy seas. The ship struck the reefs with a terrifying crash that drowned out even the howling wind. The hull shook, the mast creaked, and people were knocked off their feet by the sudden impact. But the Sea Venture did not break apart or sink, but was securely wedged between two rocks. Now came the most difficult part, getting 150 people ashore through the raging waves. The boats were lowered with great difficulty, risking being smashed against the ship's side or the rocks. The first group of daredevils set out on a reconnaissance mission to find a safe place to land. The rest watched them anxiously, knowing that everyone's life depended on the success of this mission. The wind was still strong, but the mere presence of solid ground gave the people new strength. The evacuation began, which took all day and required the complete dedication of every member of the crew. By evening, all 150 people, including the crew and passengers, had safely reached the shore. It was a real miracle, hard to believe after several days of fighting for their lives. Not a single person died during the landing, which in itself was an incredible feat for a shipwreck of this magnitude. People fell to the sand, cried, prayed, and thanked Providence for their salvation. But when the initial euphoria passed, they began to realize where they were. Rumors quickly spread among the survivors, and joy gave way to wariness. I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on what helped people maintain discipline in such inhuman conditions. What do you think about the role of a leader in a critical situation? Write about it in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the rest of the story.
I beg you.
Want to know a secret that will change your perception of scary sailor legends? The place where the Sea Venture crew was stranded was called Bermuda, or Devil's Island, by sailors. It was believed that these waters were inhabited by evil spirits and that ships disappeared without a trace here. Legend said that the strange sounds coming from the island at night were the cries of demons thirsting for human souls. Spanish sailors avoided this place, marking it on their maps as a zone of mortal danger. The surviving Englishmen prepared to encounter monsters, savages, or at least a barren desert. The fear of the unknown was perhaps stronger than the fear of starvation. However, the reality turned out to be a shocking contrast to the dark myths and expectations. Instead of scorched earth and demons, they saw a blooming island covered with dense forests. The climate was mild and pleasant, the air filled with the scent of flowers and pine needles. The first scouts returned to camp not with news of monster attacks, but with armfuls of fruit. It turned out that the demon cries were just the loud voices of local seabirds, which nested here by the thousands. The island was uninhabited, but it was full of life. Bermuda turned out to be a veritable natural pantry, ready to feed 100 unexpected guests. Wild pigs, descendants of those left here by the Spanish decades ago, roamed the forests in huge herds. It was not difficult to catch them, and soon the camp was filled with the smell of roasted meat. The fish in the coastal waters were so unafraid that they could be caught almost with bare hands. Turtles crawling onto the beaches provided the colonists with tender meat and eggs in huge quantities. It was not hell, but a real gastronomic paradise. Water, which is often the main problem for shipwreck victims, was abundant here. The colonists found sources of fresh water and learned to collect rainwater using broad palm leaves. Palm cabbage, the tops of local palm trees, became an excellent addition to the meat diet. Berries and prickly pear fruits added variety to the menu, saving people from scurvy. It seemed that nature itself was ensuring that these people not only survived, but also recovered their health after their difficult voyage. Life on the island began to improve with surprising speed. The English quickly organized their daily life, building temporary huts from palm leaves and cedar. The wood of the local juniper, which they called cedar, was an excellent building material. It was easy to work with, smelled pleasant, and was resistant to rot. The camp turned into a small settlement with a clear structure and daily routine. People who had been preparing for death just yesterday now lived better than many in London. They had plenty of food, warmth, and free time, which they had never known in England. However, this comfort posed a hidden threat to discipline and the ultimate goal of the expedition. Life in abundance made them relax, causing them to forget that they were just shipwrecked. Many began to wonder, why sail to unknown and dangerous Virginia when things were so good here? This question, at first whispered around the campfires, soon became louder and louder. The contrast between the Devil's Island of legend and reality was too striking. This place seemed like a gift from fate, which would be foolish to turn down for the sake of vague prospects in Jamestown. The expedition leaders, Gates and Summers, understood that this paradise trap could spell the end of their mission. They saw how people's moods were changing, how their desire to continue the journey was fading. It was necessary to constantly remind the colonists of their duty to the crown and the company. But arguments about honor and contracts sounded weak against the backdrop of a comfortable and peaceful life under the palm trees. Bermuda tempted everyone, offering them the chance to forget about the problems of the outside world. Interest groups began to form among the settlers, discussing the possibility of staying here forever. They talked about founding their own colony, independent of the Virginia Company. The arguments were compelling. There were no hostile Indians here, no diseases, and the climate was ideal for living. Why risk your life at sea building new ships when you could just live here? These conversations became increasingly open and bold. The expedition's leadership found itself in a difficult situation where the main enemy was not nature, but temptation. They had to balance strict discipline and diplomacy to prevent a mutiny. Thomas Gates tried to keep people busy so they wouldn't have time for idle thoughts. But the very atmosphere of the island, relaxing and peaceful, worked against him. It was a test of will that proved more difficult than the storm. How much do you think fear of the unknown can distort our perception of reality, turning paradise into hell in our imagination? Are you ready to find out how this prosperity almost led to a bloody mutiny? What if I told you that the main threat to the survivors was not hunger, but politics? On an island where there was no need to fight for a piece of bread, a struggle for power and the future began. The colonist society split into those who wanted to fulfill their duty and reach Virginia, and those who wanted to stay in Bermuda. Stephen Hopkins, a well-read man with a gift for persuasion, became the voice of the opposition. He began to spread dangerous ideas among the colonists, claiming that Governor Gates's authority extended only to the journey to Virginia. Since the ship was wrecked, the contract with the company was no longer valid, and each person was now free to choose their own destiny. These ideas fell on fertile ground, for no one wanted to trade a comfortable life for uncertainty. Hopkins argued that establishing a colony here in Bermuda would be no less beneficial to the king than in Virginia. He used legal technicalities and sacred scripture to justify the people's right to self-determination. His speeches around the campfires attracted more and more listeners, and the authority of the official government began to waver. It was a classic political crisis in miniature, played out on a piece of land in the middle of the ocean. Gates understood that if this was not nipped in the bud, the expedition was doomed. The situation came to a head when a plot to seize weapons and supplies was uncovered. The rebels planned to break away from the main group and establish their own settlement on the other side of the island. Gates acted decisively, arresting the ringleaders, including Hopkins. Hopkins was sentenced to death for inciting rebellion, which was a harsh but necessary decision under the laws of the time. However, When he was led to the place of execution, he begged so sincerely for forgiveness for the sake of his wife and children that the governor's heart was moved. It was a moment of truth for the entire community when mercy clashed with the need to maintain order. Gates pardoned Hopkins, replacing the execution with a public apology, which diffused the situation but did not completely solve the problem. This event showed that even in paradise, human nature requires a firm hand and clear rules. Soon another conspiracy broke out, this time more serious, involving armed soldiers. This time there was no mercy. One of the instigators was executed to show the seriousness of the command's intentions. A rift also emerged between the leaders themselves, Gates and Admiral Summers. Although they did not openly conflict, tension grew between them due to their different views on management and construction. To avoid conflict, they divided the people in areas of responsibility, effectively creating two camps. Summers was busy building his ship and hunting, while Gates controlled discipline and resource allocation. This division helped reduce tension and channel people's energy into peaceful pursuits. Apart from political squabbles, life on the island went on as usual, with its joys and tragedies. During their stay on the island, a wedding was held and a child was born. John Rolfe, Pocahontas' future husband, became the father of a girl named Bermuda, but unfortunately, the baby soon died. These events, births, weddings, funerals, brought the community together, reminding everyone that they were one. People began to feel not just like passengers on a shipwreck, but like inhabitants of a new land. Religious services became an important part of life, uniting people and reminding them of higher values. Pastor Buck preached twice a day, calling for humility and obedience. The bell taken from the wrecked Sea Venture called everyone to prayer, creating the illusion of normal English life. Faith helped people maintain their sanity and hope, despite the uncertainty of the future. It was an important tool in Gates's hands for maintaining morale. During this time, work on the new ships continued day and night, becoming the main goal of the community. It was a titanic task that required the participation of every man capable of wielding an axe or a saw. Construction became the glue that held people together and prevented them from falling into complete disarray and anarchy. Each blow of the axe brought them closer to departure, which some awaited with impatience and others with fear. It was a race against time and their own desires. The story of the Bermuda Mutiny shows how quickly civilized people can reject old rules in new circumstances. It demonstrates the fragility of power, which rests not only on force, but also on consent to obey. The lessons learned by Gates and Summers later proved useful in governing the colony in Virginia. Bermuda became a kind of testing ground for models of colonial self-government. This chapter in the history of the Sea Venture is full of drama and human passions worthy of the pen of a great playwright. It is no surprise that these events inspired Shakespeare to create his masterpiece. If you enjoy learning about such hidden details of history, don't forget to like this video. Guess how long it took to build a fleet without a shipyard or tools? It took almost 10 months of hard labor to build 2 ships capable of crossing the ocean. It was an unprecedented engineering challenge, as the colonists had no docks, no cranes, and not enough tools.
Push from the back.
All they had was the wreckage of the Sea Venture, local timber, and their own ingenuity. The chief architect of this project was shipbuilder Richard Frobisher, a man with golden hands and nerves of steel. The first task was to salvage materials from the wreckage of the flagship. People dived to the reefs, risking their lives to unscrew bolts, remove the plating, and retrieve the rigging. Every nail, every bracket, and every piece of rope was worth its weight in gold. Iron could not be obtained on the island, so all metal parts had to be reused. It was painstaking work to dismantle one ship in order to build 2 others. Local Bermudian cedar was chosen as the main material for the hull. This wood had unique properties. It was strong, light, and, most importantly, oily, which protected it from rot and shipworms. However, working with fresh wood required effort, and the tools quickly became dull. Blacksmiths worked day and night, forging unnecessary metal parts into axes, chisels, and drills. To seal the joints, they used a mixture of lime, obtained by burning shells, and turtle fat. This improvised putty proved to be surprisingly reliable, hardening into stone and not letting water through. Instead of oakum, they used old ropes and soaked coconut or palm fibers. Ingenuity was evident in every detail, from the manufacture of sails to the creation of the steering system. The ships were symbolically named Deliverance and Patience. Deliverance was larger, with a displacement of about 80 tons, and was built under the direction of Gates. Patience was smaller, about 30 tons, and was built by Admiral Summers. This division also helped maintain the spirit of competition between the two camps of builders. People were proud of their work, seeing beautiful and seaworthy ships being born from a pile of logs. Launching was a separate, complex operation that required precise calculations and the physical strength of all the men. There were no special slipways, so the ships had to be literally pulled into the water by hand and rollers. Any mistake could damage the hull and ruin months of work. The tension on the day of the launch was enormous, but fortunately, everything went smoothly. The ships rocked on the waves of the lagoon, ready to take on their crews. Supplying the ships for the journey also required ingenuity. Wild boar meat was salted in barrels salvaged from the Sea Venture or made from scratch. Water was poured into any containers that could be kept watertight. The colonists understood that the journey to Jamestown would be short but dangerous, and that supplies had to be reliable. The construction of the Deliverance and Patience proved that human ingenuity can overcome any obstacle. It was a triumph of collective labor and engineering thought in conditions of complete isolation. These ships were not just a means of transportation, they were a symbol of man's victory over circumstances. When the sails were raised and the ships left the lagoon, many cried as they said goodbye to the island that had become their home. However, no one knew how the homemade boats would behave in the open ocean. The risk was enormous, as any strong wave could destroy a structure held together with homemade nails. But there was no choice. Staying on the island forever was impossible for men of honor. They entrusted their lives to their creation and to Frobisher's skill. How reliable do you think ships built without blueprints or professional equipment, based solely on experience and intuition, could be? In the next chapter, you will learn about everyday life in this strange paradise. Life in Bermuda, despite the intense work of building ships, was surprisingly calm and measured. The colonists quickly adapted to local conditions, creating a unique model of society. The morning began with communal prayer, after which people went about their duties. Some went to the shipyard, some went hunting or fishing, and the women cooked and mended clothes. The island generously shared its gifts, and the problem of hunger, so acute in England and Virginia, was completely absent here. Hunters brought back wild boar carcasses every day, providing the camp with fresh meat. Fishing was so productive that fish were often simply released or dried for future use. The local birds, called kahu, were so trusting that they would perch on people's shoulders, making them easy prey. This abundance meant that people did not have to spend all their energy searching for food. An important part of daily life was exploring the island. Admiral Summers, an experienced cartographer, drew up a detailed map of the Bermuda archipelago. He explored bays, straits, and islets, marking convenient locations for future settlements. These maps later became an invaluable resource for the British Empire. Summers was enchanted by the beauty of the island and often went on long expeditions. The religious life of the community was rich and strictly regulated. Priest Richard Buck conducted services according to all the canons of the Anglican Church. Baptisms, weddings, and funerals were performed with all the rituals observed as far as possible. Faith was the foundation that kept people from becoming feral and morally corrupt. The Bible was read daily, and its texts were interpreted in relation to their situation. However, this paradise had its dark side. Far from civilization, interpersonal conflicts and old grudges intensified. People grew tired of each other, living in a close-knit community in a limited area. There were fights and quarrels that Governor Gates had to settle. He acted as a judge, trying to be fair and impartial. During their stay on the island, the colonists even managed to lay the foundations for agriculture. They planted seeds saved from the ship to test the fertility of the local soil. The results were encouraging. The vegetables grew quickly and produced a good harvest. This confirmed the assumption that Bermuda could become a prosperous colony. The experimental beds became the prototype for future plantations. Special attention was paid to keeping the fire going, as it was difficult to rekindle. Bonfires were maintained around the clock, and designated guards ensured that the flames did not go out. Fire was a symbol of civilization and hope, a beacon in the night. In the evenings, people gathered around the fires, told stories, and sang songs. These were moments of unity and rest from righteous labor. Death also visited the island, reminding them of the transience of life. Several people died in 10 months, including the wife of one of the officers and John Rolfe's newborn daughter. They were buried with honors, with wooden cedar crosses erected. These graves were the first English burials on this land, forever linking the colonists to the island. Death in paradise seemed especially unnatural and tragic. Despite all the difficulties and temptations, the community retained its structure and identity. They did not turn into savages, kill each other, or forget their purpose. It was a unique social experiment that proved the resilience of English society. 10 months in Bermuda changed each of them, making them stronger and wiser. When it was time to leave, many had mixed feelings. They were leaving a safe and comfortable place for the unknown, which could prove deadly. But duty and the desire to return to the wider world outweighed comfort. They loaded supplies onto the Deliverance and Patience and set sail. What if I told you that the rescue turned out to be worse than the disaster? The journey from Bermuda to Virginia took only 2 weeks and was surprisingly smooth. The homemade ships performed well at sea, withstanding the test of the waves. The mood on board was upbeat. The people carried food supplies and hopes of a speedy reunion with their compatriots. They expected to see a thriving city, a fortified fort, and the joyful faces of friends. The reality that greeted them as they entered Chesapeake Bay shocked them. Jamestown greeted them with dead silence and the smell of decay. Instead of a fortress, they saw dilapidated huts and a crooked stockade. The fort gates were wide open, as if inviting death to enter. There were no people in the streets, only emaciated shadows wandering among the ruins. What they saw was the aftermath of a terrible winter that went down in history as the Starving Time. Of the 500 colonists who had been in Jamestown in the fall, only about 60 remained alive. The survivors resembled walking skeletons, with wild eyes and skin stretched tight over their bones. They were so weak that they could not even bury the dead. Hunger drove people to extremes. They ate the leather from their belts, their shoes, tree bark, and even dug up corpses. It was a picture of absolute despair and degradation of the human being. The contrast between the well-fed, healthy arrivals from Bermuda and the dying inhabitants of Jamestown was horrifying. Gates and Summers, coming ashore, could not believe their eyes. They had brought aid to a thriving colony, but arrived at a graveyard. Governor Gates immediately took control of the situation, organizing the distribution of food and maintaining order. But the supplies they had brought were catastrophically insufficient to save the colony in the long term. The survivors told horrific stories of attacks by Native Americans who had kept the fort under siege all winter. Anyone who ventured outside the gates in search of food risked being shot with an arrow. Disease, cold, and hunger claimed dozens of lives every day. The colony was virtually destroyed, and the arrival of 2 small ships seemed only to delay the inevitable end. The hope that the Bermudians brought with them was shattered by the harsh reality of Virginia. The joy of the end of the journey was replaced by deep mourning and fear. The question, why did we leave Bermuda, was now written in the eyes of everyone who had sailed on the Deliverance and the Patience.
Why did we leave?
Gates assessed the food supplies and realized that they would only last a couple of weeks for everyone. Staying in Jamestown meant condemning everyone, both the new arrivals and the survivors, to starvation. The situation seemed hopeless, and a decision had to be made immediately. The town was in such a state that its restoration seemed impossible without large-scale support from England. The atmosphere in the colony was gloomy. People were demoralized and apathetic. They had lost faith in salvation and were simply waiting for the end. Gates's arrival shook them up, but did not guarantee survival. It was the darkest hour in the history of English colonization of America. It seemed that the Virginia project had completely failed. Encountering the horrors of Jamestown was a severe test of the faith and fortitude of the people of the Sea Venture. They had weathered a storm, survived on a desert island, built ships, but here they faced something far more terrifying. It was the collapse of civilization, a return to a primitive state of struggle for survival at any cost. Do you think it is possible to restore human dignity in society after such monstrous trials, or does the experience permanently damage the psyche? In the next chapter, we will learn about a decision that could have changed the history of America.
How could they let it come to this?
There's hardly enough left to bury the dead, let alone feed us.
Assessing the catastrophic situation in Jamestown, Thomas Gates made a difficult but sensible decision: to evacuate the colony. There were no resources for recovery, people were dying, and there was no help to be expected. The plan was simple: load all the survivors onto 4 ships, 2 Bermudian and 2 remaining in the port of Jamestown, and sail to Newfoundland. There they hoped to meet English fishing vessels and make their way home. This decision meant acknowledging the complete defeat of English colonial expansion in North America. Years of effort, huge sums of money, and hundreds of lives would have been wasted. But Gates, as a military man, understood that saving people was more important than ambition. Preparations for departure began. People gathered the pitiful remains of their possessions, rejoicing at the opportunity to leave this cursed place. The soldiers wanted to burn the fort to the ground so that it would not fall into the hands of the Indians. But Gates forbade it, hoping that the English would return someday. On June 7, 1610, the sad flotilla left Jamestown and began to descend the James River. The people said goodbye to their dream of the New World, feeling both the bitterness of defeat and relief at the same time. It seemed that the story of Virginia was over, but fate had another incredible twist in store for them, which can only be described as divine intervention. The next morning, as the ships were approaching the mouth of the river, they noticed a boat approaching. It was the vanguard of the fleet of Lord de la Warr, the new governor, who had arrived with 3 ships full of provisions, weapons, and new settlers. The meeting took place just hours before the colonists would have set sail for the open ocean and left Virginia forever. It was a miracle that changed the course of history. Lord de la Warr, learning of Gates' intention to leave the colony, ordered all ships to turn back. He was determined to revive Jamestown and had all the resources to do so. The weary and disillusioned people were forced to turn back to a place they hated and feared. This return was met with little enthusiasm by many, but an order is an order. De la Warr's arrival breathed new life into the dying colony. He landed on shore with great pomp to the sound of trumpets, demonstrating strength and confidence. The new governor immediately set about restoring order, cleaning up the fort, and organizing defenses. Fresh troops and supplies allowed Jamestown to survive the crisis and begin to recover. The moment when Gates's fleet met de la Warr's ships was a turning point. If they had missed each other by even a day, English America might have ceased to exist. The history of the United States would have taken a completely different path, possibly becoming a history of French or Spanish expansion. Chance, luck, or providence saved the British Empire. Thomas Gates, despite having his evacuation order rescinded, played a key role in saving lives. His leadership in Bermuda and Jamestown earned him the respect of the new governor. The survival experience gained on Devil's Island proved invaluable for organizing life in Virginia. Bermuda's supplies, though small, helped them hold out until the main relief arrived. Thus, despite the shipwreck, the Sea Venture expedition accomplished its mission. It delivered the people and leaders who, albeit belatedly, saved the colony. History knows no subjunctive mood, but this episode makes one think about the role of chance in the fate of nations. The return to Jamestown marked the beginning of a new era. The city was rebuilt, discipline was tightened, and the colony began to grow slowly but surely. But the food problem remained acute, and the colonists' eyes turned once again to Bermuda, the island that had once saved them from death.
Yes, sir. Almost finished here.
Despite the arrival of Lord Delaware, the food situation in Jamestown remained tense. There were more mouths to feed, and local resources were depleted. Then Admiral George Somers proposed a bold plan: to return to Bermuda on the ship Patience to gather pork, fish, and poultry for the colony. He remembered the island's abundance and was confident that he could make a quick return trip. Somers was already over 50, a respectable age at the time, and he was exhausted from previous trials. But his sense of duty and love of the sea prevented him from sitting idly by. He volunteered to lead the expedition, fully aware of the risks of sailing across the stormy Atlantic again. A small team of volunteers accompanied him. The voyage proved difficult. The ship was caught in another storm and could not find the island for a long time. When they finally reached Bermuda, Somers was already seriously ill. The old sailor's strength was failing, and he felt the end approaching. Disembarking on the shore he had discovered and grown to love, the admiral realized that he would never see Virginia or England again. In November 1610, Sir George Somers died in Bermuda. Before his death, he bequeathed that his heart be buried on this island and his body be taken to England. It was the last wish of a man who found peace here after a turbulent life. His nephew, Matthew Somers, fulfilled his uncle's request. The admiral's heart was buried, and his body was embalmed and secretly loaded onto a ship. However, after the leader's death, the crew of the Patience made an unexpected decision. Instead of returning to Jamestown with supplies as planned, they decided to sail straight to England. Captain Matthew Somers probably wanted to deliver his uncle's body to his homeland as soon as possible and claim his inheritance rights. This decision left Jamestown without the promised provisions, but brought important news to London. The return of the Patience to England caused a sensation. The sailors' stories of a wonderful island full of food and devoid of dangerous natives captured the public's imagination. Somers' body was buried with military honors in Dorset, but the Bermuda archipelago itself became a true monument to him, even being called the Somers Islands for a time. The admiral's death and the crew's decision not to return to Virginia had far-reaching consequences. Bermuda ceased to be just a shipwreck site and began to be seen as a potential colony. The English realized the strategic value of this place as a transit point and source of resources. Thus ended the life of a man who saved hundreds of people during a storm and gave England a new outpost in the ocean. His heart remained forever on the island that became his greatest discovery. The legend of Somers became part of Bermuda folklore, and the city of St. George's is named after him. Somers' story is an example of service and self-sacrifice. He did not seek fame. He simply did what a sailor and gentleman should do. His last voyage to find food for the starving colonists was an act of supreme humanism. The people who remained in Jamestown never saw the return of the Patience. They had to rely on the resources brought by Delaware and their own strength. But news of Somers' death at the Paradise Island eventually reached them, strengthening the bond between the two colonies. The story of the Sea Venture's wreck did not remain a dry fact in the Admiralty's reports. It became a cultural phenomenon of its time, thanks to the letters of the survivors. William Strachey, Secretary of the Colony, wrote a detailed account of the event, known as the True Declaration of the State of the Colony in Virginia. This letter, full of vivid details of the storm, despair, and miraculous rescue, found its way to London and began to circulate in literary circles. One of those who read this document was William Shakespeare. The great playwright was looking for a plot for his new play at the time. The description of the storm, the shipwreck, the magical island, and the struggle for power within the group of survivors captured his imagination. Thus was born The Tempest, one of Shakespeare's last and most enigmatic works. The parallels between the real story and the play are obvious. The storm that opens the play almost exactly repeats the description of the storm experienced by the Sea Venture. The island in the play, like Bermuda, is full of noises, sounds, and sweet songs. It is both frightening and attractive. Even the name of one of the characters, Caliban, may be an anagram of the word cannibal, referring to the colonists' fears of the savages of the New World. The character of Prospero, a wise ruler and magician, is in many ways reminiscent of Gates and Summers, who are trying to maintain control over a motley crew. And the drunkard Stefano and the jester Trincolo, who plan to kill Prospero and take over the island, are a clear satire on rebels like Stephen Hopkins. Shakespeare masterfully reworked real events into a philosophical parable about power, forgiveness, and human nature. The sinking of the Sea Venture, which should have been a disaster, paradoxically led to the expansion of the British Empire. News of Bermuda's fertility and strategic location, brought back by the crew of the Patience, prompted the Virginia Company to take action. In 1612, just 3 years after the shipwreck, an official expedition was sent to the islands to establish a permanent settlement. The ship Plow brought the first 60 settlers, among whom were those who had survived the wreck of the Sea Venture and wanted to return to paradise. Thus, the city of St. George's was founded, named after Admiral Somers and the patron saint of England. Today, this settlement is the oldest continuously inhabited English city in the New World. Bermuda quickly proved its worth. It became an important port for ships sailing from Europe to America and the West Indies. The island provided sailors with fresh water, meat, and of course, the famous cedar for ship repairs. Fears of the Devil's Island were finally dispelled, giving way to the pragmatic use of resources. The lessons learned by the survivors of the Sea Venture formed the basis for the management of the new colony. The experience of self-government gained during their forced stay on the island helped to create an effective administration. Bermuda became a prosperous colony, avoiding many of the mistakes and tragedies that befell early Jamestown. The connection between Bermuda and Virginia remained close for centuries. The islanders repeatedly sent aid to the mainland colony in times of need. Many families had relatives on both sides of the ocean. This historical bond, born out of the disaster of 1609, became the foundation of the Anglo-American presence in the region. Interestingly, descendants of the Sea Venture survivors still live in Bermuda in the United States. The names that appeared on the passenger lists of the ill-fated voyage can be found in telephone directories and historical chronicles. John Rolfe, who lost his wife and daughter on the island, later played a key role in the history of Virginia, starting to grow tobacco and marrying Pocahontas.
Island with nothing but grit. It's that same spirit that brought us here today.
The story of the Sea Venture and survival in Bermuda is more than just an adventure story from the past. It is a hymn to human resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to find hope where only death seems to await. The 150 people who were cast away on an uninhabited island not only did not become savages, but also created a civilized society, built ships, and rescued their compatriots. They turned Devil's Island into a thriving home and gave the world the plot for a brilliant play. This story makes us wonder, what would we have done in their place? Could you trade a safe paradise island for a dangerous journey for the sake of duty? Or would you stay under the palm trees, forgetting about the world beyond the horizon? The answer to this question is not as simple as it seems. If you enjoyed this story of courage and survival, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new fascinating stories about the great events of the past. Write in the comments what historical topic you would like us to cover in the next video. See you soon.